Greetings, everyone. This is the Servant-in-Chief of the Essence Holdings International Community of Companies. And I believe that from this point on, for the share purposes, I'm going to refer to myself as SRxun. I'll save the first name, Captain Eon, for stage performances. But for here, since we're just talking and this isn't about show, then I'll go to, or I'll stick with the everyday persona. With that said, this share is really going to have a common theme. And I was really going back, or the title has kind of evolved and progressed. You'll see there's a common theme, and it's gonna have to do with a lot of R's or auras. The reason I laugh is growing up where I did, I'm very hesitant to generalize this and say, this is across the board. But what I can say for a fact, for certainly, is that growing up where I came from, those from the hood or a select population would not say R, when they're speaking about the letter, but they had a tendency to say aura. So this share, the title went from restoration versus removal to just a whole bunch of auras. And this whole idea, this whole concept just stems from the main idea in chapter 40. Really, I believe it's all of chapter 40 for the most part. And this is where it speaks of the baker and the cupbearer for Pharaoh. And this really spoke to me, just the way it starts off. Verse 1, it talks about them being thrown into the king's prison or Pharaoh's prison. So I can assume this is not just any what we would equate to, or what I would equate to a county jail, for commoners. But it starts off by saying they offended Pharaoh. And that got me to thinking about, equating the sovereign position that Pharaoh held on this earth on a higher level to that of God. So if I could, quote unquote, mirror the two, then I would put Lord God Almighty in that position, and how sin is offensive to him. And I don't feel any type of way out of line by saying this, but all mankind, and maybe for that instance, all of creation, because sin has entered the world, is offensive to him, because he is this holy God. And this is just hyperbole. I hope I'm using that word right. But could it be that this existence here is the king's prison, so to say, where we're here on a trial basis, for lack of a better word. We're here, and at the end of our sentence, which is this life, we get a final judgment. And is that going to be, to begin the theme, a restoration or a removal? The cupbearer was restored back to his place. And I like to play on words. And could it be that he bore or bared some form of acceptable image? And again, I'm going back and forth with the play on words on not just Pharaoh, but as it relates to me and God, bearing some sort of approved image that allowed him to be restored back to his place. Whereas the baker, maybe he wasn't cooking up the right things, to kind of use the scriptures as a part of my explanation. Maybe he was, his bread was leavened. And later on, God speaks of the leaven of the Pharisees. Maybe there was something in there that shouldn't be in there. And as a result of this, was grounds for his removal. And literally, not only was he removed from his position in the kingdom, but as we know, his head was removed from his body. So I guess that was God completely saying, there's no coming back. For me, this really was a theme because I'm offensive to God in so many ways, all so often. And honestly, it bothers me. And because, God means so much to me, and he's done so much and given, and just, he's so wonderful in every way. And, during our conversations in our relationship and in our relationship during the intimate times, there is a blessed assurance, that part of it is that it's good to want to retain or be mindful of righteousness. I should have like a little cheering soundbite, so anytime the R word is used, as I said before, I went off track a little bit. In this relationship, it's good to have this righteous mindset. But also, it's like, he's like, just relax a bit. And I'm comforted by that fact that it's okay. Simply because my elder statesman and brother, Paul, he is transparent enough in one of his letters to the saints that, he feels the same way. The same thing occurs where he wants to do right and he has the intentions to do right, but the exact things that he's trying to get right from, he finds himself doing. And it goes back to the first idea is, that my flesh is offensive to him. Now, if anything, that says, and that shows just the level and the greatness of God, simply because despite all this, he's still, and I'll go and use verse 5 or verse 8 of chapter 40, how he still provided his interpreter, i.e. Jesus Christ, this mediator, to help write the cross signals. So in that, I have built hope and confidence in the fact that as long as I continue to bear my soul and my life and my thoughts and just lay it out before him, I can be assured that restoration lies there. Down in chapter 41, verses 52, and also I think I put 16 here. It talks about when Joseph bore himself. This is after he was promoted to his place in Pharaoh's house, or i.e. after being promoted in your spot in the kingdom that of God, that he was given a wife, and he had his two sons, and one of them he named Ephraim. And it says here, because God offered him, fruitfulness amidst great affliction. And so I believe that's also a restoration that can occur, and that does happen, is that during this trial period of existence here, fruitfulness does take place, and the restoration process actually begins and develops and continues until the completion of this trial to eternal restoration in full. Now, before I make it too more convoluted, I also realized, here goes this R theme again. What stood out to me was Reuben, and how back in chapter 37, verse 22, how he's the one that persuaded his brothers not to kill Joseph. And then down in chapter 42, verse 22, after, Joseph was testing them, he's the one that turned around and said, this is the reckoning for what we did. And then also down in 42, verse 37, how he was the one that went to his father and was willing to relinquish the lives of his two sons in order to seek righteousness, to try to right things, which ultimately led to restoration. So the removal of Joseph in the beginning ultimately turned back around, and in the end found the entire family unit restored. So if I could close with anything, it would be that sometimes being removed, and this really sounds a little generic, but sometimes being removed is really for the purpose of righteous restoration. Let me try to say that again. Actually, I'm a little distracted right now. That this gift, receiving the righteousness of Christ, removed the guilty stain in order to make room for the restorative power of God's Spirit living within us. Caption this. Sir.